Okay, so picking up right where we left off, in the previous video, we looked at how to search your database using a query. The problem is you're not going to want to go into design view and enter a value in the criteria field every time you want to search for something. That's not really user friendly. So just as you no longer have to manually enter information into the table, you use the form, you're no longer going to have to use the query. You're going to use a form, and the form will give you the results that you want. The form is going to give you some selectors. Those selectors will put values into the criteria fields for you. Now, the problem with that is that if we try linking the new form right to the table and say we give you access to the authors, the book author column, if you have duplicates, those duplicates will show up, and we don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a new table before we continue. So let's close this. We'll click on Create. We'll click on Table. View, Design View wants a name. We'll call this Authors. And pretty sure that's not a protected word, but we'll append underscore TBL for table. We didn't do that with collection. Not a big deal. Get rid of the primary key. We're going to change this to short text. And let's see what we referred. I want to use the same field name for consistency's sake. So it's called book author. So we'll close that. Yes, we'll save. It's just because I increased the width of that. So book underscore author. Now, it's entirely possible, on a side note, to have two fields that have different names but actually store the same value, and you can indeed link them. That's just a side note. So the name doesn't have to be the same, but in this case, might as well make it work. Okay, so we have book author, and it's a short text. So we save it. And what we're going to do is we're going to start entering people's names. Now, I'm not going to bother creating a form for this. It's only one value, so it's easy to navigate. So we said Jane Doe, and I think I spelt John Smith two different ways, which brings up a good point. And that is, what if someone makes a typo? You search for John Smith, and you only find the John Smiths with an H. Or you search for him without an H, and you don't find the ones that do have an H. So this is going to actually serve a secondary purpose, and that is eventually what we're going to do is in the new additions table, this will stop being a free edit field, and instead it will be a drop-down box. So creating this table allows us to do a few things, but primarily we're doing it for the purposes of the form. So Jane Doe, John Smith, and then what we'll do is we'll save the table. Actually, didn't have to. Like I said, as soon as you enter the value, it's saved. All right, so now we have our new table that has a couple authors in it. What we're going to do, we do create, blank form. This is going to be our form that's going to interface with the query. View, design view. We're going to get rid of those controls that I said that I don't like. So we click on design, make sure the form is self-selected, properties, records, format tab, record selector, no. Navigation buttons, no. Again, I've said it before, it's to control the way that people can navigate your database because that could subvert some very serious security issues if you're using a database for, say, a professional reason. Okay, so let's save this already, and we'll call this search DB. Do OK. So The first thing we need to do is we need these authors to be in a drop down here. So I'm going to choose the combo box, also known as a drop down box. And it's interesting because in Excel Visual Basic, the code that accesses a combo box, I believe, is actually called drop down. So even Microsoft goes back and forth with the terminology. I want combo box to get values from another table or query. Yes. We want it to be from the authors table. We want to use just book author. And it can be a send-in value. And then we're going to widen this because if you put in a really long name here, no matter how wide this is, it would still be truncated by the size of this column. Don't know why, just the way it works. And then next, and then finish. Left click the upper left corner to move it separately. Save it again, view, and there we go. Since these values are only listed once in the author table, you don't get repeats. Again, if I had used the actual collectibles, every time Jane Doe was listed, it'd have shown up here. So we're almost ready to make this work. What we want to have happen is once we've made our selections, we're going to have a button that says OK or search or whatever, and that is going to then execute the query. So view, design view, and let's go ahead and add a button. So I just clicked on that there. Now we're not going to have this, I'm trying to think, do I want to have this run a query? We can do it this way because what we're going to do is we're going to modify the query itself as opposed, this macro is just saying run the query. We're going to go back and tweak the query to make it look to see what's in here. So next, let's just use text instead of a picture. And if you change the text here, that's what will show up there. Next, finish. Just grab one of the corners if you want that to be bigger. And so now you don't see it, but there is now a macro attached to that. If you really want to see it, again, make sure that the proper object is selected. The property sheets, event, see embedded macro. You can actually go out to the macro to see what it's doing. I'm not going to review it because it basically is just saying run the query. So far so good. We have a form that has a button that says run the query. But this information needs to get to the query. So that's the final step. So we're going to right click and choose design view of the query. And whereas we had a constant in here, we're now going to put in a field. So that was author that we looked at. So if you right click in criteria, you can choose build. And it's a lot to look at, but basically what this is saying is these are elements of various types, such as pre-existing functions, calculations, fields. It's saying you can select these and it will show up in that criteria. So basically what we want is, this is called Collectibles database. So let's navigate to Collectibles. We're going to go to Form. And what this means is any form that is open, that's been loaded. So that's a lot that I just did, but think you're just going from general to specific. The database, the form, the loaded form, this specific form because you could have multiple loaded forms, and now you can choose the values that you want that are on that form. So I believe it's combo 0 because we only have one combo box on that form, and it defaults to value. So again, you're saying in this database of the loaded forms, use this loaded form, use this field from that loaded form, use its value. And I didn't double click. So we get to see that again. Build, collectibles, forms, loaded forms, search database, value. There. So now it showed up there. And you can actually manually type up here. Just don't recommend it unless you're certain of the syntax. And then click OK, and there we go. So let's expand that out a little bit. So again, you're seeing a similar type of verbiage. You're going from general to specific. So you're saying the form and the search database. So let's now save that, close that, and if we didn't make a mistake, that should work. So let's save the search database form. We'll choose Jane Doe. We run the query, and it's blank. So something's not quite right, I think. Close that. Pretty sure it was that value that we chose. So design value. See, it's saying search DB, but it's not having the value. Yeah, that's not quite right. So let's delete that and try it one more time. Right click, build, forms, loaded forms. Well, for right now, there's no forms loaded. All right, so we'll do all forms, search database, combo 0, value. Ah, see, now combo 0 is there. It wasn't there before. It was saying form, the name of the form, but for whatever reason, it didn't have that value there. So back to what I said a few minutes ago, the general to the specific forms, the search database form, and the field on that form. Let's try that one more time. Close it. Search database, Jane Doe, and there we go. So sorry about that. Even when I was reading through it, it didn't seem quite right. I'm like, is there something missing? So sometimes intuition is correct, sometimes not. Anyways, now you have the ability to search your database in a meaningful way. So now it's just rinse and repeat, really. You can just add more authors to the author table. And then what you can do is you can add more drop-down boxes. And the drop-down boxes you put into the corresponding field. You probably wouldn't query based on condition. Can't imagine why you would. You could query based on publisher. I believe the original requester asked for that. But I think that's about it for now. So my apologies about that little hiccup there. But sometimes I like to leave in mistakes because it's a teachable moment. And actually, since that was so quick, let's do one more thing. So let's close the query. And what we're going to do, as I mentioned, this table is going to be used for several reasons. It's not just for the query, it's also going to be for creating new values because as we saw, I have two different John Smiths by spelling. And so a query would fail if you're searching for one John Smith but not the other. So what we're going to do, let's go to our new edition form, click on View, Design View, and what we're going to do is rather than directly editing this field, we're going to have a drop-down box that links to the authors. You select a value from that, and that gets put into the author field. So let's do this in a couple steps. So let's just move this off to the side. And let's create our combo box. And this is going to look familiar, but it's going to be very similar to what we just did with the search database. We have 3 choices this time because we have a table linked, but that's not the one we want to use. So we're going to use the same choice we did for the previous form. I want the combo box to get the values from another table. We want it from the authors table, book author. Next, again, give yourself some space. Next. Now, we want to have this be stored in another field. Which field do we want to be stored in? We want to be stored in book author. So next, finish. Just reposition these a little bit. We'll leave that down there for the moment. Save this. View. So now you've just enforced data integrity, because where someone could misspell a name, they can't. Now they can only choose from a selected value. So book title, and now you choose, you can see it populates it down here. So this we could hide. Book cover type, soft cover, and then we close. Now we go to our collection, and there we go. So now you've enforced data integrity, at least for that one field. The only, I don't want to call it a limitation, but now you need to manually modify the author's table. Having said that, that's a lot easier than what you had to do before, because up to this point, every single book you entered, you were technically modifying author because you had to manually type it in. So typing in a new author occasionally into this table is a lot easier than typing it in every single time. Particularly if you've gotten into an author who, very prolific, has dozens and dozens of books, and you're just starting. You don't have to type that name in that many times. You type it once into the author table, and then you're all set. In fact, let's end with one more demonstration. So we'll close that. We'll go to the author's table. And we already have Jane. We have John. Let's do Jess Johnson. Close the table. And like I said, as soon as you enter that value, it keeps it. Saving it isn't what saves the values. Saving the table just saves the structure. So we go back to New Edition. And there you go. So just like that. Okay, so I think that's it for real this time for this video. If you have any questions, just let me know.